and we decided that we are going to give a little overview of what is happening in 2026. And now Connie, Fern, and there's a couple of us missing, but we were a part of an OPA, the Organization for Professional Astrologers, has a peer group, and it's actually a really great thing to be a part of. I feel like there's three of them that you would do in order to become certified, in addition to um, astronomy for astrologers and consulting skills and whatnot. So this was my last peer group, but it's a really great group of gals. And so we thought we would stay in touch and put together this overview for you and decided to collaborate. So
Yes, thanks, Beth. I think I totally agree. I think we've formed such great friendships over this peer group. And I'm just going to start off with introducing myself. My name is Connie from trineandkite.com, and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. So at this moment, it's 8 a.m. in the morning on a Tuesday morning. So yeah, we're on all different time zones. So it's always very challenging trying to get all of us together, but we made it. So I'm going to hand it to Fern.
Hi, I'm Fern Vichnik, and I'm joining our 2026 year ahead overview from New Mexico. And it's in the afternoon here. We're missing a couple of folks who are also in Australia and in England. And my astrological business is Y Stars Astrology. All right, so are we going to start off by talking about Saturn, Neptune moving into Aries in February of 2026? And this is a transit that we actually haven't had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the 0 degree point of Aries for several thousand years. So this is a really huge planetary alignment. And we had a taste of it in 2025, but it's going to really settle in 2026. And the first transition or shift of that is actually Valentine's Day weekend when the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries are exact. So it's going to be a really interesting time. And we're going to start this talk of Saturn and Neptune joining up in the first sign at the 0 degree by exploring the archetype and the symbolism and the meaning of Aries. So, Connie, you're going to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, thanks, Fern. And coincidentally, I think it's funny because when you mentioned that this great conjunction in February, that's pretty much the weekend before the Chinese New Year of we move from wood snake to fire horse. So energy is going to shift a lot. I'm excited. So Aries, wow. That is, yeah, when Fern and Beth were saying you should talk about Aries, and I feel like, oh, maybe because I've got Moon and Mars both in Aries. So for me, I'm pretty familiar with Aries. Um, but Aries is so much more to it. Like it's the first sign, everything is new, it's in spring, and it's all about ourselves, and also it's about this drive, it's the archetype of Aries. It's the drive, the courage, the assertiveness, not to the extent of aggressiveness if you play it well. So I'm going to talk more about that in my presentation next, where we talk about Chiron in Aries and then moving into Taurus in 2026.
awesome. Well, I just put together some things to talk about the planet of Saturn. And I just have some keywords to say because I feel like Saturn is reality. I feel like it's a time check. I feel it's maturity, discipline. It can be tangible things, things that we can touch. It can be authority. the government, like a principal in a school. When we get in trouble, we have to deal with Saturn, right? So it's where we feel restricted, it's where we can feel limited. It can bring about fears of like not being good enough because we've set our goals and we've got to keep working towards that. Sometimes it can bring about feelings of depression and fear and loneliness and melancholy because we are put a lot of pressure. It can cause a lot of pressure to us that we need to achieve, and we've got to follow, be a law-abiding citizen and things like that. So we can repress, it can be very repressive. We can suppress things. It can be rules, regulation, aging. And sometimes people with a lot of Saturn in their planets as children can take on a lot. So they almost are like older people when they're young. And so as they get older, they can almost have is it the Benjamin Button where they become younger when they become older. So that's when I would say it can be very traditional, but that's kind of how I would wrap up the Saturn. If I had to give it some keywords, that's how I'd wrap up Saturn.
Great. I love the reference to Benjamin Button. That is so great. And I really think that's a good encapsulation of that Saturn energy. And they often say that about Capricorns, the older they get, the younger they act, kind of thing. So Neptune is the other planetary kind of player in this conjunction. And this is such an interesting alignment on so many levels. But for me, just that oppositional paradoxical effect of Saturn and Neptune, because they're such different sort of energy bodies, planetary bodies. And as Beth, as you're saying, Saturn is so concrete and material, and Neptune is so immaterial. It's got that, it's a planet of water. Its ruling sign is in Pisces, and it's moving from that last 12th sign that it rules, Pisces, to this fiery, airy place. So already we've got kind of a planet in a very different realm than it's at home in, which is this from water to fire. But we also have this Neptune, whenever Neptune moves into a new sign, we tend to get a softer side of that sign. We become more aware of illusions we might have in relationship to the qualities of that sign. We may have fantasies or kind of Hollywood movies that play out about that particular archetype. I've seen people talking about the kind of the cowboy movies, or any kind of movie or any kind of character that is very independent and pioneering, that has a lot of courage and bravery, but who can kind of be blunt. And so as Neptune moves into Aries, I think we're going to have a lot of fantasies and illusions and almost like putting that kind of character on a pedestal, putting that warrior person, oh, this is who we all want to be, kind of thing. So, how that plays out with the joining up of Saturn creating structure with Neptune dissolving structure in this fiery first sign of Aries. Wow, my brain is just like kind of exploding around that. What do you both think around that one?
I
Yeah, I
think,
mean, one's form and one is formless. So it's
yeah,
gonna be really
exactly.
interesting. I can't help but think of when we had Saturn in Pisces. It's, and it's still there. It's kind of like this put your dream to an illusion, but then it's in Aries. So it's kind of like this, what are we fighting for? Are we are we fighting for anything or is it all an illusion?
Yeah, I feel that like because Neptune is slower moving compared to Saturn, because Neptune takes 14 years to go around a cycle. Saturn is 2.5. So it's like Neptune has it's a longer lasting effect on Saturn itself. Like it's probably, it might just dissolve or soften a bit of that, the areas, the boundaries that Saturn has placed over the years, and also like softening the thing. And also because it's in the sign of Aries, so it's like making, probably it could be because with collaborating with Saturn, it's like a teamwork. It's like making dreams, Neptune, come true in a sense, like, realizing the dreams that, and in Aries, so it's action. So it's like it's call to action. So that would be probably, hopefully, all of us, we could have our dream, certain of part of our dream come true in that certain way. So yeah, that's how I see it as well. Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, Connie. I think also I like how you framed it too, of the relationship between, we don't think of Saturn as moving quickly, but it does move more quickly than Neptune. And so putting those two in relationship to each other and the timing of how Saturn is going to first bring some form and structure, and then when Saturn moves out of Aries, Neptune's going to kind of dissolve all of that for the next 12 years or so. So, just if we imagine what that could look like, one piece of that I think is that we're going to have to get used to continuously coming up with new beginnings. We're going to have to keep trying again and again, and there's going to be kind of illusions and fantasies about these new beginnings.
Absolutely.
What do you
Absolutely.
think, Beth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're all starting over. It's like a new chapter. We're like, oh my God, nobody has lived through any of this. Nobody's lived through Neptune and Aries. So it's just, this is all going to be brand new. And we'll just have to see what shakes out of this.
Yeah, and Saturn has this earthy vibe of it because of Capricorn. So there is this earthy part of it, and Neptune is more watery, more nebulous. So earth and water, I think they can work pretty well together with a new beginning in Aries. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm almost sensing a time of continual reinvention, that
Yeah.
there'll be a lot of almost kind of glamorizing of, every year we become somebody new.
Yeah,
And if
like
you're
that.
not becoming somebody new, it's like, what's the matter with you? How come you're not reinventing yourself? Because every Aries I know, every person I know with lots of Aries planet, they'll get really passionate and excited, that, very fiery, right? About, I don't know, brain scans or something, the newest way to do brain scans. And every time I talk to them, they're obsessed with it. They're looking from, oh, the angles, and then a few months later, it's like, so how are you doing with that brain scan obsession? Brain scans? What are you talking about? I'm on to studying tea ceremonies now. It's like, okay.
Well, that's very cardinal, right? Like I can start everything, but I need somebody to come in and mop it up for me.
Exactly. Or, and some people get bothered by that, but because I have seventh house ruled by Aries, I naturally resonate with that energy. I just think it's fun. It's interesting. It's like, well, what do you do now?
Absolutely.
All right. So, I don't think anybody really knows exactly how the Saturn Neptune conjunction is going to play out. And there is this great sense right now as we stand, as we're filming this, we're on the precipice of the shift and the transition from Pisces to Aries. And so there is that sense of like the Fool card in the tarot of we're getting ready to take this leap. And I think, Connie, we had talked about at some point that this is also around the same time this happens, a few days later, February 17th, it's the shift into the year of the fire horse.
That's right. Yeah.
So, wow.
I know, right? And I know Beth is going to talk more about, the nodal shift, air, fire. So it's like 2026 is really like, I mentioned it in another video of mine, like 2026 is the first year, year one. So it's like everything is new. Yeah, the dynamic's going to be very, very different. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
very active, very
Mhm.
quick.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to shape the whole year, but we also have some pieces of 2026 that we're going to all be talking about that are going to kind of fill in, some of the more short-term segment. Some of them are going to last all year long. Saturn, Neptune last even longer than a year. But the first one on the table it's coming up. It's going to be the shift from Chiron is Connie, you're going to talk about Chiron making a transition here. And when is that going to happen? And tell us about
Yes.
it.
Sure. Thanks, Fern. So let me share my screen. Alrighty. Can you see my screen?
Mhm.
Okay. So, thank you so much, everyone, really, on this panel. It's been an honor to be here with you all, and thank you to everyone watching and spending this time with us. As I introduce myself, my name is Connie from trineandkite.com. And today, what I love to share is a psychological and evolutionary look at Chiron. So especially as it starts to move towards the sign of Taurus, and why this shift is actually very personal for many of us when it comes to safety, self-worth, and feeling supported in life. So what is Chiron? In simple terms, I'm just going to skip the mythology of it. I'm just going to go straight into the astronomy and archetype of it. So astronomically, Chiron isn't a planet. It's not a planet. It's a centaur object that was discovered in 1977 during a time when psychology, trauma healing, and mind-body awareness were really coming into the mainstream. So what's fascinating is where Chiron sits. Its orbit, it's between the orbit of Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn, as we talk about, as Beth talked about, it's about survival, about responsibility, and it's about, this is what I have to do to be safe. Uranus is about awakening, about freedom, becoming who we really are. So Chiron lives right in between these two. So it's the mediator or bridge between the old and the new. So in astrology, the archetype Chiron shows us where something hurt early on in life, our pain point or pain body, as one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Eckhart Tolle, has uses this word, pain body. It shows us where we learn to protect or minimize ourselves, where the pain eventually becomes wisdom. So it's often called the wounded healer, but I like to think of it as the place where life gently, or sometimes not so gently, nudges us and forcing us to grow. So our charts are all alive. We come to this lifetime carrying the chart that is meant for us to evolve into, and it gets activated during major transits like such. And, as we talk more about it in the rest of the presentation and the planetary movements. So how does Chiron works over time? Chiron cycle is the soul stage of development. So Chiron moves very slowly. It takes about 50 years to go around the zodiac. So when we talk about Chiron transits, we're talking about long chapters of life. Because of its unusual orbit, it stays a long time in the sign of Aries, about 7 to 8 years in Taurus, and much less time in other signs. So the last time Chiron was in Taurus was back in the late 70s and mid 80s. So for many people watching, this is probably the first conscious experience of this energy as adults. But before I go into Chiron in Taurus for 2026, I just want to go back to Chiron in Aries, where we have been in this sign for the past 7 years. Chiron has been in Aries since 2018, and it will stay there until 2027, except for a very short dip into Taurus next year, 2026, which I'll talk about a bit later. So as I mentioned just now, Aries is all about identity. It's the part of us that says, I am. You know, we ask ourselves, who am I? So this is where I want to gently clear up a big misunderstanding. So a lot of people think that Chiron in Aries is all about boosting confidence, putting yourself first no matter what. You know, it's more than that. Like in my client work, I've seen over and over again that this transit is much more nuanced than that. So I'm going to give you two very different examples, two clients of mine. Let's call them client A and client B. So client A is a retired businessman. He has a chart with a very strong Leo stellium. So lots of personal planets in Leo. So when we first spoke, it was 2017. So Chiron was still in Pisces during that time, but moving into Aries very soon. So when I talked to him about this coming transit, he was saying, oh, no, I'm already very comfortable putting myself out there. You know, I don't think Chiron in Aries is going to do much for me. But when we look deeper, Chiron in Aries will fall in his fourth house and will be squaring his North Node in Cancer and South Node in Capricorn in 7th and the first house, respectively. So we spoke again 2 years later, and what unfolded during this transit was very interesting. It wasn't about confidence at all. It's like, of course, there were other major transits happening, but life has brought him into situations that pushed him to soften his self-focus, become emotionally vulnerable, nurturing and caring more for others, and kind of step away from his self node, his past life of the old Capricorn survival patterns. So Chiron, the way it heals people, it really depends on the individual chart, and it's very interesting. It's not, for his case, it's not about asserting himself. It's more about, you know, giving him the courage to be brave enough to open his heart and live his soul purpose through emotional presence and care. So Chiron in Aries, this transit didn't inflate his ego, but it challenged it. Like it has redirected him towards something much more meaningful. That's pretty amazing, I thought. And client B, the second client that I want to talk about, she's a ballet dance instructor. So she has a very water-dominated chart, very intuitive, deeply empathetic, and incredibly sensitive to other people's needs. So her pattern was the opposite. So she consistently bent herself backwards to keep her partner happy. So for her, Chiron in Aries, this transit was asking her, can she put herself first without feeling guilty? Can she stop apologizing for her needs? Can she exist without constantly accommodating others? So in her case, this transit is all about learning self-assertion, not from ego, but from self-respect. So the key point here I want to make is it's the same transit, but very different charts, very different lessons. So Chiron in Aries is never about me first in a shallow way. It was all about healing wherever identity has become distorted, whether through self-centeredness or self-erasure. So collectively, we've seen this happening since 2018, like our identity resets during the pandemic, 2020. People start to question who they really are without productivity. Having, suffering from burnout, forcing us to face where we abandon ourselves. So Chiron in Aries has been asking, who are you when you stop proving, pleasing, or performing to survive? I think the people that felt this most are probably people with significant placement in the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So for many of us, these years have already brought deep identity healing. So that brings me to the topic of Chiron moving into Taurus, where identity wants to feel safe. So now that we start to know who we are from the past 7 years of Chiron in Aries, the next is questioning ourselves. Can I feel safe being this person? Now that I've found my identity, can I feel safe in this? So that's Taurus. So Taurus is very grounded, very human. It's about money, housing, the body, comfort, stability. So this is where worth lives in the nervous system. The Taurus wound, typical Taurus wound would sound like, oh, there's never enough. I could lose everything. I can't relax yet. So Chiron in Taurus isn't about chasing more, especially material or tangible stuff. It's about learning to trust, to receive and soften without feeling like safety has to be earned. So we have been here before, Chiron in Taurus. So let's look back at the previous Chiron in Taurus periods. The themes are very consistent, but I'm not saying that it's going to be exactly the same, but the nuance of it. So in the late 1920s and mid-30s, there was this massive economic instability because of the Great Depression. So safety felt fragile and scarcity became something people carried in their bodies. And then again, in the late 70s to mid 80s, because of the Cold War, there was inflation, job insecurity were everywhere. And that was when personal computers were invented. So this was when work equals self-worth. And it really took hold culturally. So every time Chiron is in Taurus, humanity is being asked, what actually makes me feel safe? And the answer is never just money. I just want to have a quick side note about people might ask me, hey, Connie, why are we talking about Chiron before 1977 when it was discovered? Like, wow, once Chiron was discovered, its orbit could be calculated backwards and forward in time. So just like how we calculate Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So discovery doesn't create the influence. It simply means we became more aware of it. So I'm going to talk about this preview. So around June next year, 2026, Chiron is going to briefly move into Taurus, and then it goes back into Aries for one final round of identity healing. And then from April 2027, it settles into Taurus and stays there till 2033. And by mid-2034, it's going to be fully moving into Gemini. So that short dip in 2026 is like a preview. This is where people start realizing that with all the advanced technology like AI being developed, we need to build self-confidence with safety. Identity without grounding will lead to burnout. So it's not all about go, 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 but we need to stay grounded. So I would advise, get more into nature. And rest isn't something we need to earn. It's essential for our long-term survival. So Beth and Fern's going to talk more about the upcoming Air and Fire Focus 2026 with the shift in elemental energies. Chiron's short dip into this earthy Taurus, it's reminding us to slow down, to find our own rock, our own tree, to stabilize ourselves during times when we feel overwhelmed by the fast energies. This is especially so for people with lots of fire and air in the chart because, they might find it really exciting when all the outer planets are moving into fire and air signs. But just have a reminder that, maintaining balance is crucial to avoid burnout. So again, who feels most in this Chiron and Taurus? It's probably more of people with a lot of fixed signs like Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So I'm going to end with explaining why this cycle is also very personal for me. Because before astrology, I spent many years in the corporate world and where worth was measured by performance and endurance. So, and growing up with an Asian multicultural background, I have always been absorbing messages like, oh, I have to work hard to deserve the safety. I can't take up too much space. Work is more important than rest. So in my work, I love helping people more from trying to prove themselves to trusting the flow of life, from surviving to receiving, from identity to embodying the self-worth. So as Chiron moves from Aries into Taurus, we shift from asking, am I allowed to exist? To asking ourselves, can I feel safe? Can I feel supported and enough where I exist? So that's, I think, is the real healing. So yeah, so if you want to explore more, just go into trineandkite.com and I have recently uploaded monthly forecast for 2026 for all the 12 signs. And if you want to dive deeper, you can just book me online as well through the website, trineandkite.com. So I wish everyone a safe and wonderful 2026. And I hope that we all evolve into a better version of ourselves in 2026. And thank you and all the best.
Thank you so much, Connie. That was wonderful. And I learned so much about Chiron and the transition point from Aries to Taurus. I really appreciated your perspective on it. You've got such an insightful and deep way of approaching astrology. It's really wonderful. Um, and this is such a huge shift, Chiron going from Aries to Taurus. And it's interesting with all the fire and air that Chiron's going to be holding that Earth for a little while. Super cool. Oops, Beth, we still got you muted. You want to unmute and share a little bit? Yeah.
I was gonna say, there's the cycle is really inconsistent, right? Because I know Chiron stays in Aries for like a really long time, right? And so, or longer than how it is stayed in other signs. So, Connie, do you know how long it's gonna be in there in Taurus?
It's going to be till 2033. So
Okay.
it's normally about 7 to 8 years. So yeah, it's pretty long as well.
So fixed signs may have a little challenge with this, that there's always
Yeah.
going to be an opposition or a square to kind of like, oh, I need to heal from this.
Yes, and probably people with Chiron return as well. That's going to be quite a major thing. I feel like it's like clockwork. Like when I had my Chiron return 3 years ago, oh, it was clockwork.
Oh yeah.
I have Chiron in Aries and it really hit me.
Same. Same.
Right?
Oh yeah.
The Chiron return is definitely a profound kind of crossroads period in time, and mine was very rewarding at the end of it, but
Yes.
in the middle, it
Yeah.
definitely had some pain spots. So, but I love those examples you gave in your presentation of people that you've worked with who have gone through that experience, because you can really see it's not that it's all bad or all good, but it just works you, it works you.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
All right, well, we're going to shift now from Chiron to Jupiter. And so we've got, a lot of planets and planetary bodies changing sign this year. And one of them is Jupiter. So Jupiter has been hanging out in Cancer, and it is going to be moving into Leo, and roughly around the same time as some other shifts that we've been talking about. So Jupiter changes sign every 12 years. I mean, every year, roughly a year, but it goes back to the same sign every 12 years. So we've got a 12-year cycle of Jupiter returning to itself. And we've had Jupiter in Cancer since last year, basically, since early 2025. And it's going to reach that 1 year mark in June of 2026. So I want to talk a little bit about, just for folks who may be new to or newer to astrology, an overview of Jupiter. What is Jupiter? Who is Jupiter, the planet? And so Jupiter is the Roman name for the king of the gods in the Greek mythology, known as Zeus. And while there's a lot of overlap in the mythologies of this kind of Western region and the meaning of the planet Jupiter, it's not necessarily a exact correlation. Jupiter, the planet, has to do with growth, expansion, wisdom, luck, storytelling, travel, opportunities, but it also, like every planet, even the so-called good planets or easy planets, it also has a shadow side. So Jupiter also has to do with things like hangovers and excess, too much. So anybody who's eaten too much sugar, drank too much booze, and shot too much, any kind of overindulgence is going to not necessarily feel good in the aftermath. In that moment, you're feeling great, you're stretching your boundaries, but afterwards, it may feel like you did too much. You overdid it. So one thing to focus on when you're experiencing either Jupiter transits or just in that Jupiter kind of Jupiter motion is how can I focus on expansion that is meaningful, expansion and growth and opportunities that feel like in the long run, more Saturn style, they're going to feed me, nourish me, and help me feel good. In the body, Jupiter rules the liver, and the liver is the organ in the body that helps us process poison, helps us process when we've overdone things. The liver kind of cleans it all up. So I've also got some key dates for this particular Jupiter movement, and from January 16th of 2026 to April 4th of 2026, Jupiter is going to be roughly hanging out around 15 degrees of Cancer. So it's going to be retrograde and kind of moving back into those early teen degrees. And it's actually going to go direct. It's actually it will be going direct at 15 degrees of Cancer, which is the degree of Jupiter's exaltation. And this is so interesting because Jupiter is also in the sign of its exaltation. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I want to just speak a little bit more to Jupiter as a planet. Jupiter rules the signs of Sagittarius and Pisces. Pisces is the traditional ruler, rules the ninth house. And again, it's exalted in Cancer, it's in its fall in Capricorn, and it's in its detriment in Gemini and Virgo. And I'm going to speak a little bit more to what exalted means in particular, and possibly fall and detriment if we have time. So I've got some more key dates over here to pay attention to as you kind of navigate through this Jupiter cycle. Jupiter is going to be trine Saturn in the summer. It's going to be conjunct the South Node as we head into the winter of next year. And it's also going to be conjunct Mars at the same time. We're going to have that Jupiter in Leo transition, both conjunct the South Node in Leo and also Mars in Leo. And then it will go retrograde right at the end of the year. Okay, so Jupiter, as I said, has been hanging out in Cancer for the last 6 months and has been really making some interesting movements in Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer brings a greater sense of collective awareness and expansion around things like food, digestion, our stomachs, just in the physical realm, issues around children, women, our roots, our history, antiques, which are the physical manifestation in our homes of history or roots, the element of water, and the emotions of nurturing empathy, emotion, wisdom, and vulnerability, and also themes of home. So, Jupiter exalted in Cancer. What does this mean? How does it express itself? So, to exalt, the literal definition of it is to raise and rank, honor, power, character, quality. Also, to elevate, to praise, to extol. So, Jupiter in Cancer shines. It has a almost like illuminated kind of effect. And it it's interesting because Jupiter's at home in Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. So when we think about growth and expansion and learning and all these Jupiterian themes, there's generally speaking, we think of that Sagittarius expression of movement, of adventures, of, you know, making everything a bit exaggerated, a bit bigger. But thinking about how things grow in nature and thinking about how life grows within the womb of the mother, when we really kind of settle into that, we realize that growth begins inside. Growth begins in the unseen dark realm, like a cave where we kind of have that little spark or seed of imagination. And what helps life ultimately thrive is water. None of us would exist, no life would exist without water. So to me, having Jupiter in Cancer make as an exalted place makes so much sense because there is a sense of how do we grow what is meaningful to us? Well, first we imagine it. First we have emotion around it. We have love for it. We care for it. Anybody who's a gardener or has animals or children or home knows that unless you really take the love that you have for the beings that you care for, and you continue to kind of notice and recognize what do these need to grow and expand and get stronger and be the best that they could be. They need that mothering type of care that Cancer provides. So we've had an opportunity over the last 6 months, and now that Jupiter's retrograde in Cancer, we have an opportunity to take that understanding that we've gained and go deeper with it, to internalize it during the retrograde period. Now, Jupiter is going to move into Leo in July of 2026. And this transition is going to bring a really noticeable difference to what is expanding in our lives and in our realm. Depending on how well you know your natal chart, you can take a look and see if Jupiter will be changing houses when it makes the sign shift from Jupiter in Cancer to Jupiter in Leo. It may not. It may just bring a different quality of expansion to the same house, or it may move to a different house and really kind of put that house under the magnifying glass that is Jupiter. So Jupiter and Leo, we're seeing kind of a thematic alignment with some of the other planetary transits we're having this year, with that shift into fire signs. We're seeing that in many places. We talked about Saturn, Neptune. Chiron's a little different, going from fire to earth. But Jupiter and Leo continues this fiery theme. And at a certain point in the year, it's going to form a trine aspect to Saturn and Neptune. And so there's going to be a kind of flow or ease and a sense of gentle movement between those three planets. So Jupiter in Leo is going to bring greater collective awareness and expansion around art, creativity, children, the elite, wealth, royalty, performance, acting, fire, sun, heat, generosity, heart, and confidence, and among other Leo kind of themes. So when Jupiter goes into Leo, there is going to be this shift from internal to external, that we're going to be much more focused on what we can see, how we can show up in the world, how we express ourselves. There's a lot more movement and passion that happens as we make that shift. I'm just going to back up a little bit, because one thing I do want to talk about is the difference between Jupiter in Cancer and some of the aspects it was making to the other planets, and then that Jupiter in Leo and the aspects it's making to different planets. So when Jupiter was in Cancer, right off the bat, it formed some squares to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So there was this element of tension when we first encountered Jupiter in Cancer, but there was kind of a struggle between our desire to expand and grow and embrace new territory and reality. We also have had more recently squares between Jupiter in Cancer and Chiron in Aries. And so there's this kind of painful awareness of, who we want to be and how we can most fully take on a particular identity that feels truthful to us, and how we care for others and how we feed ourselves and nurture who we love. So that's been ongoing over this winter of 2025. As we enter this Jupiter in Leo realm that's coming this summer of 2026, there's much more support for Jupiter in Leo. We've got some really nice trines, as I mentioned, with the fire signs. We've got a little tension with Jupiter in Leo opposing Pluto in Aquarius that comes along also in the summer. So there's some different ways to wield power that we see showing up. We've got Pluto and Aquarius over here. Let's look at the big picture. Let's take the collective, the community into account. Let's transform how we approach relating to community. And then Jupiter and Leo, this like, hey, we want to have the good things in life. We want to play. We want to laugh. We don't want to get too serious. And so there's a bit of a standoff that happens in the summer of 2026 between different forms of power. Okay, so I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit, skip back here. Working with Jupiter, how can you personally work with Jupiter as it begins to move around your chart and kind of take hold in a different realm of your chart, whether it be the house or if it's aspecting personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars? You're going to want to take note of that if you can, or get a reading from a professional astrologer to see how Jupiter is showing up in your chart. But in general, to kind of focus in on Jupiter and make the most of it, you're going to want to ask some questions like, what really truly has meaning for you? And this is going to be, meaning that is that helps you expand your world, that opens up new doors, that allows you to maybe not always physically, but at least in your mind, have certain kinds of adventures to bring greater diversity into your life. Jupiter is a really wonderful planet because it can help you stretch your comfort zone. It can help you stretch the realm of what is known and step into the unknown with a sense of excitement. So, what in your life do you feel like you want to help grow bigger? And how can you grow this area in a way that feels responsible to you? Because sometimes when we're just focused on growth, things can get messy, you know. Things can there can be breakdowns that happen because we're growing without thinking of the consequences. So that's one of the shadow sides of Jupiter, is unchecked growth without really looking at how is this going to impact the future. So Jupiter is a planet that does have to do with stretching our imaginations into the future. And so the best use of Jupiter's power, so to speak, is to stretch our imagination into the future and imagine a future that is going to benefit not just ourselves, but the broader collective. So some Jupiter practices that kind of help you line up with that. Share the wealth. And this is not just share your money, you know, be generous, give away all your money, but this is also share what you know, share your wisdom, share your gifts, share your talents with others. And this is part of Jupiter's connection to being a teacher or a guru, not just, you know, teaching necessarily mathematics, although that can be a spiritual practice. But Jupiter kind of has that higher teaching potential as well, of teaching true spiritual kind of lessons that carry on down the generations and retain a sense of meaningfulness and wisdom. And that is why Jupiter is also known as a planet of wisdom. So, what is your wisdom? What is your truth that you can share? This is going to be really important to spend time with as you navigate Jupiter's transit. Also, Jupiter is a planet that brings inspiration. So, how can you both receive and also provide a sense of inspiration? And we talked about meaning. Okay, so if you would like to find out more about how Jupiter shows up in your chart in 2026, I'm available for consultation. I'm also going to be teaching several classes in 2026. It's going to be there's going to be several different on a variety of topics. My specialty is ancestral astrology. So if that's a topic that you're interested in, please reach out to learn more. And if anybody watching this is going to be in Tucson, Arizona in February, I'm going to be giving a talk there about the integration of astrology and herbs, which is my other specialty. So thank you all for watching. And next up, we are moving into the transition of the nodes. And this is more Leo. So we're learning more about Leo topics with Beth. Are y'all ready to go, Beth?
I think so. Let me go to share my screen here
All right.
and preview, share. Okay. So this coming year and this summer, I have the dates in the presentation that'll be listed out here, but we have the moon's nodes that are going to be shifting into Leo and Aquarius. So let me just do this. Let me get my little arrow out. Okay. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, who am I? I'm a professional astrologer. I'm an astrological and transformative life coach. I do research and I do some teaching. I have a company called Common Sense Astrology, although a lot of my social media is readings by Beth W. I'm a Libra Sun, Taurus Moon, Aquarius Rising. I have loved astrology for a long, long time, since I was a little girl. I love animals, travel, and really good food with that Taurus Moon. I have a corporate background. I was in advertising for a long time. I have a degree in advertising international business. So I also have a YouTube channel, which I need to get back into but it's called Holy Shit Beth, and I interview everyday remarkable people, weave in astrology, and then because I have eighth house planets, we talk about the things that people consider taboo, like orgasms and bowel movements and menopause and cannabis and things like that. So you can find me on YouTube at Holy Shit Beth. Feel free to subscribe. And what are the lunar nodes? They're not planets. They are lunar nodes that reflect a geometrically calculated point where the moon intersects the path of the sun from our viewpoint on Earth. The path of the sun traces the sky, and there's a north and south node. People may say, well, I don't have any oppositions in my chart, but everybody does with the north and the south node. They are always 180 degrees opposing each other. Lunar nodes represent the points in space where the eclipses could happen. They are not actually physical objects, but when the sun and the moon simultaneously orbit the nodes, that's when the eclipses appear or occur rather. The nodes are points on the ecliptic and where the sun's apparent orbit, and they intersect the moon's orbit. Okay. What do they mean in our chart? Like eclipses, nodes are steeped in the language of fate and karma and destiny, and some say reincarnation. And I believe my point of view is that people that don't think incarnation are just haven't lived that many lifetimes, because I have had many occurrences, mostly with people who I've never met before. And then I saw them, and yeah, I get this weird feeling, and it's, oh my God, I know everything about this person, even though I've never met them before. And it's like, oh my God, let me see your chart. Let me see your chart. Or let me look at your astrology. And they're kind of like, what are you even talking about? Okay, just give me the goods, your birth information, location, time. And without a doubt, there has been always a connection that is related to the South Node. Like they'll have a planet there, or like I had met somebody and literally, like, my heart is beating out of my chest. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know you at all, but like, why am I feeling this way? And I'm looking, so I'm like begging this guy to give me his information. And I was like, oh my God, his south node was sitting on my Venus at the exact degree. And I was like, oh my gosh. So there's a good chance that we had some sort of relationship, intimate partners, or married in the past. So I was just like, oh my God, I could feel it. And then because it's the south node, I remember going to lunch and it was fun. And then spending a little bit more time, I was like, this person's a total drain on me. And that is what the South Node can do. It can be a drain. So it's just kind of good to know, especially when you're looking at relationships with people. They call it synergy, um, or synastry. And that's when you lay planets, your chart over another person's chart, and you can see the relationship to say, oh my God, do I have some sort of past with this person? And I feel like a lot of times that's where it shows up. Okay. So the North Node is a destiny point. It's kind of where, um, like we're meant to move in this place. Like I'm a Western tropical evolutionary, I guess you could say, astrologer. And so it's kind of like, where is my destiny? Where do I feel purpose in life? Okay. And so it's like, anytime I'm feeling stuck or lonely or depressed, and it's like, okay, where should I do? Okay, wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to go to my North Node, because that is where, like, it's just gonna feel, I'm gonna feel better doing this. If everybody knew their north and south node, they can say, oh my gosh, if I feel a certain way, then I need to look in the north node and I'm going to go do those things. And all of a sudden I'm gonna feel so much better, even though there can be some resistance towards that. Okay. Again, they're always in opposition. But it's kind of like this point of fulfillment where we say, oh my gosh, so South Node in our chart can represent past life patterns. It can be subconscious motivations, early childhood programming, or family impressions, baggage that we need to process and integrate in order to move forward. And I don't like to say that we need to get rid of the South Node. I feel like there is times definitely when we can use it to our advantage. But if we spend too much time there, again, these feelings of depression, of stuck, like, what am I doing here? I feel like people who do live in a state of depression are not looking at their North Node and where they feel purpose, because that is the point where we should always look at and do those things. Okay. Sometimes moving towards our North Node can feel really uncomfortable. It's like, well, my God, I'm afraid of the failure. Like, or, like, oh my God, if I really step into this, I'm going to show everybody who I am. And it's like, oh my God, I'm afraid. So we can kind of like, it's almost like there's a little cloud that we almost need to clear away in order to like let it out or to step forward. And sometimes it does take some kuyans to kind of get there and be like, no, that's where I'm going. I'm going to detach. I need to just go there instead of living in a place of familiar. But we don't abandonment. We just recognizing those points and our behaviors that are attached, or our reactions that are attached to either of those points in our chart, is where it's just really good to know this stuff. Okay. So it can feel uncomfortable. We have to be conscious and learn to step towards it. Most of the time we know where we're going and like our routines, like it's like, oh, well, I'm going to stay in what I like, what I know, what's familiar. And maybe that's your South Node and you're just spending too much time there. Okay. So sometimes it can really feel like a stretch to get there. But if we don't, like I mentioned 2 times before, stuck, depressed, worthless, bored of the same old, same old. And so we're not really meant to completely abandon it, but it's meant to it's where we're meant to go, kind of like a North Star. Okay. This is what a glyph is. And this is kind of, I tried to get the best I could in the clip art. And so this is kind of what it looks like, maybe like a head, or you got headphones on. This is what it would look like in an astrology chart. Now, listen, it's got many names. The North Node can be the ascending node. Okay, it can be the dragon's head. And forgive me if I screw this up in pronunciation, Caput Draconis, right? It can be the dragon's head. It can be Rahu. And again, all these things, like Western astrology is like, we're going to call it the North Node. We're going to call it the ascending node. There's Hindu astrology, there's Jyotish astrology, there's Chaldean astrology, there's Chinese astrology. So everybody has a different flavor of what they call it, but this is what it looks like. And again, these are the names of what it can be referred to. Okay, this is the South Node, the descending node. As you'll notice, it looks upside down, right? So it's like a lady's head with curls on top, or somewhat of a ram's head, a dragon's tail, or the dragon's backside, right? And sometimes it's meant to be where we defecate, right? So K2, or the Cauda Draconis, okay? Now where we meet the nodes, okay? So every 9 years, okay, it's a halfway to the return. So at 9 years, we're like, we may feel something, but we don't know what is. And as I'm learning much, much more about, they say you really don't know about it until you're in your 40s, okay? So we have our first nodal return between the ages of 18 and 19. Then we have our nodal reversal, 27, 28, roughly. Now it stays in a sign for 18 and a half to 18 and 6 months or something, right? So they return every 18 years and 6 months, and our reversal is every 9 years and 3 months. But it stays in a sign for like 18 and a half months roughly. Okay, so it can be a little bit longer than just those years there, roughly. But these are the ages where we have these things, and we can also have nodal squares, but I just am trying to keep this really, really simple. Okay, but if we live long enough, we can have a fourth and fifth nodal return. Okay, so let's see here. And okay, so right now, on January 11th or 12th, depending on where you are, or the 10th if you're in Australia, okay, we have had, since this year, we've had the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo, okay? And so those will shift. All right, so we're going from yin signs, from mutable signs, from water and earth signs to fixed, this yang or masculine energy, fire and air. Okay, so the North Node will go into Aquarius. The South Node is going into Leo. I had a picture of fire here and I spent about 20 minutes. And damn, if it wouldn't kept showing up as this little tiny thing without without the fire there, which was there. And then it disappeared. And I was like, I don't know what happened. But anyway, there is a fire. Imagine a fire here. Okay. So air and fire. Air fuels the fire. Okay. So this will occur depending on where you are because we have friends in Australia. I'm putting the date before it is in the Western countries. Okay, so July 26 and 27, 2026 through March again of 2028, 26, 27. And there are a couple ways to look at the nodes. Okay, there's true node, which I use, and then there's mean node, okay, which is kind of like an average, but it can really be like a not quite 2 degrees difference. Okay, so I use an ephemeris. The ephemeris that I use looks at the true node. So I just use that because it's easier. And I kind of went back and looked at a lot of things. And to me, the true node was where I related to. Okay, so it's kind of like the house system. You pick those depending on what works for you. Okay, so these are the shifts that are happening. Okay, so here we go. Aquarius and Leo lunar node dates. Okay, so again, July through March. So we're looking at about a year and a half or 18.5 months. Okay, an opposing sign. So the North Node in Aquarius for people that are older, okay, that are still around these dates. So if you were born anywhere between this March 28th, 1952 to October 9th, 1953, again, we'll give a day or two depending on where you are in the world. Anybody born with this time is going to have a North Node in Aquarius. Now the same for November 2nd through April 2nd, 1970 through April 27th, 1972. Again, 1989 through 1990, you can see the dates here. And then most recently, December 18th, 2007 to August 21st, 2009. Did I even say that right? December 18th, 2007 to August 21st, 2009. Okay, so then the reversal date. So anybody that has these dates, I like to say, oh, we're gonna, the universe will apply like a silver platter to say, hey, where you at? What are you doing? Are you really checking in? Are you where you are? So the universe sometimes presents a situation to us, no matter people, things, places, whatever, to kind of remind us, are you on track? Are you doing what you're supposed to do? Are you doing? And sometimes it can be a little beep, kick in the tushy to say, hey, wake up, let's stay on your track, right? Okay, so again, we're looking at a 9-year difference here. So we're always going to have these reversal dates of halfway in between those lunar node return dates. Okay, I'm hoping this makes sense. And again, I use the true node and I'm using the American Ephemeris by Neil Michelson, and the other name I'm just not going to attempt to announce right now. So sorry. All right. So Aquarius keywords: humanitarian, organizations, groups, being philanthropic, progressive thinkers, rebels, reformers. Okay. But standing up for what's right, not just like your own agenda, which kind of the Leo can do. We want to look, what am I going to do to stand up for something that is going to make effective change for the collective or for masses of people or my neighborhood or things like that. Okay. Um, Scientists, social affairs, astrologers, future-oriented thinking, physicists, pilots, okay? Objective thinking, emotionally detached, being eccentric and not giving a shit, okay? Genius, friendships are really important, being innovative and industrious, things like that, okay? So South Node keywords: actors, musicians, people who run dance halls, entertainers, gamblers, government officials, impresarios, jewelers, prominent positions of leadership, sportsmen, stockbrokers, theater owners. Okay, so this is where we can be really egotistical, arrogant, colorful, dramatic, needing validation, needing constant attention, risk takers, people who are standing out. Okay, so I'm hoping understanding. So when we have the North Node in Aquarius, we're going to focus more on the keywords of that. And we're going to say, oh, how much time am I spending? Like, where do I need to let go of needing validation and emotionally detach to step into who I truly am and not taking everything personally? Okay. North Node in Aquarius, South Node in Leo, attributes to develop, objectivity, a desire for friendship. Okay. Making decisions for the group's best interest, a willingness to share unconventional ideas and not giving a shit about it. Okay. Willingness to champion humanitarian causes, active participation in groups, always better with a like the Leo might want like a hierarchy, like, oh, I'm going to only talk to, the people on my level. When it's an Aquarius, it's like a flat organizational square. So we all can contribute at a equal level. Okay. Awareness of equality. I also say like Aquarians don't like to be grouped into stereotypes like, well, just because I did this doesn't mean I am that, right? So like don't categorize them. It's kind of like I'm an individual within this group. So recognize I may not share all the same attributes as those people. We're all individuals together with different attributes. So no stereotyping. Do not categorize people into that. It's so annoying. Relating to other people as individuals, okay? Creating win-win situation, recognizing how everybody is special, not just a certain few or being elitist, okay? So this is tendency just to leave behind, insisting on getting my way, making changes just to exercise authority, attachments to taking risk, thinking everything's about you, okay? Willfulness, stubbornness, like doing things to like, oh, I'm going to do it my way, but sometimes there's an ego involved and it won't just be for like, oh, I'm not going to do it because of this. It's going to be like there's an agenda, an egotistical agenda behind it. And that's the kind of shit be like, you're wasting freaking time and it's so unproductive. Okay. So being dramatic, having melodramatic tendencies, doing what's expected instead of following one heart, unbridled passion, going to extremes, unaware of unaware of others' importance, like, oh, I'm just going to talk because I like to hear my voice, or I'm not going to listen to you because what I say matters more, that kind of stuff. Okay. Prideful in response based on fear. Okay. Who share these notes? We got Albert Einstein, Jeff Goldblum, Liam Nelson, Patrick Swayze, Pierce Bronson, Cyndi Lauper, Putin, Leonardo DiCaprio, Ethan Hawke, Elon Musk, Simon Pegg, Melissa McCarthy, Mark Wahlberg, Ewan McGregor, Taylor Swift, Kristen Stewart, Margot Robbie, Emma Watson. Like, I don't know any of these people personally. I feel like we know the South side or the Leo part of them, but behind the scenes, they may be doing some good. Okay. Here we go. I always like to include the body parts because these things can actually come up for us. Okay. Regardless if this is you or if you have these nodes, because the nodes are there regardless of you. If you have planets or angles that are in Scorpio or Taurus, you may have issues that can come up with this. Okay, so just some things to be aware of. Achilles tendons, ankles, calves, circulation, our electrical system, like having numbness or tingles, lower leg stuff, neurotransmission, varicose veins, stuff with our spinal cord, vision, eyesight, the quality of our blood, clairaudience, cramps, irregularities of the heart. Okay, so a lot of the stuff with Leo, you can read there, but a lot has to do with our heart, our upper back, all these other things in here, sheaths, some muscles, blood disorders, fevers, heart weaknesses, conjunctivitis. I was like, what, pink eye? Anyway, convulsions, those types of things can come up for you, even though these aren't your nodes. Okay. So it's just good to know these things. And then they are tied to the eclipses, okay? And it's interesting because I feel like in the past a lot were within that sign, and this time we don't. We've got a couple that are out of sign, okay? But that's not uncommon because as long as they're within like 11, roughly 11 and a half degrees of the north or south node for a full moon, it could be out of sign, okay? And then if a new moon occurs like 17 and a quarter degree of the south or node, it can be a solar eclipse, okay? So they don't always fall in those signs, but these are the dates of the eclipses, okay? And if you tune into my Instagram channel, I do little videos and I talk about the dates. All right. So this one will be obvious because a new moon is when the sun and moon are together. So anybody that has a birthday around this date, and I like to go a little bit further on either side, are going to feel this. Okay. Especially if you're a Scorpio or a Taurus or Aquarius or Leo. Okay. This is going to be a little bit different, but I would look at the degrees. Anybody who's a Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, or Sagittarius, and I'm going to look at whose birthdays are around the 12 and a half degree mark, okay? So you may have your sun there and you know when your birthday is, but you may have other planets and you do not know it. So again, it's good to know your chart because you may have your Mars there and be like, oh my God, I'm feeling this crazy stuff around the full moon. And you may not know you've got a planet or an angle there, which you will feel without a doubt. And sometimes it is profound, okay? So again, we got another new moon. So anybody's birthdays around these dates in August, you are going to feel it, especially if you're a Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, or Scorpio. So I would look at those dates roughly around them in those particular months. And again, I will list those out around that time in my Instagram videos. Okay. And then we've got this other one at 4 degrees. But again, you're just going to look at these dates. And if you know your chart, you're going to look at these degrees and those modes and say, oh, there's a good chance I'm going to feel it. And then where it is in that house is be like, oh, that's good chance it's going to affect me there. Okay. So again, good thing. You want a reading with me? We can talk about it. Okay, then I just did some little snarky stuff here. Okay. North node in the first house in the south house in the south. Okay. So north node in the first house to me means you've spent past lives or early life being freaking codependent. Okay. So in this life, you may have trouble with relationships that will stick, or you're always going to have some sort of these little glitches that pop up because you're meant to own your own individuality, right? Like, oh my God, I'm melding into this other person. It's like what we're naturally going to do because these are unconscious, sometimes they're subconscious patterns of like, oh, I'm used to getting into relationships and letting this other person dictate who I am, or I'm kind of melding into these people. Okay. And so it's like, no, you're going to have little conflicts, or it's just not meant to be because you're in this lifetime meant to develop who the fuck you are. Okay. North node in the second house, south node in the eighth house, second house, eighth house. Again, resource house. It's time to develop your own wealth. Stop manipulating others to getting what you want from them. Third house, ninth house. A lot of this sometimes is education and spirituality. Okay. Distant and local. Stay present. Let your curiosity guide your studies. Let go of dogmatic beliefs. Here we are on the parental and authority and home and work. Okay. Fourth and 10th house. Are you ignoring your family and your home duties and your emotions, putting work before loved ones? Cut it out. North node in the fifth, south in the 11th. It's time you learn to have some fun and romance. Allow play and creativity to be part of your routine. North node in the sixth, south node in the 12th. You might have to wake up and get real, get a job, be of service, become part of society and enjoy it because that south node in the 12th can just check out. Okay. And they kind of would rather be home and like be an escapist, sometimes become or be drug addicts because it's easier to be there than grounded in reality. Okay. Then we're going to go the opposite. So South Node in the first, North Node in the seventh. It's no longer all about you. Allow harmony and peace to be the focal point in your relationships. South Node in the second, North in the eighth. You're going to have stop hoarding things before it gets too long. Let stuff go and get going. Okay. And then we got South Node in the third, North in the ninth. If you're too focused on the details, you never see the big picture. Look up and have faith in something bigger than you. South Node in the fourth, North Node in the 10th. Stay in all the time. Getting stuck into family drama keeps you from setting your goals. Get a plan together and move out of your parents' house. Okay, South Node in the fifth, North Node in the 11th. Without commitment, you'll never be in that long-term relationship that you desire. So go out and join a group, and you just might find somebody you have a lot in common with. Find a companion there. South Node in the 6th, North Node in the 12th. If you nitpick others that way you may not, wait, hold on. If you nitpick others the way you nitpick, it should be nitpick, not pick. Nitpick yourself, you'll miss the point of all the fun. Okay, and find love in the imperfections. So again, I just put a little snarky thing together to say it's important to know where your nodes are in your chart and what house they are. And these would be somewhat of the themes that I would say go along with that. Okay, then I feel like it's really important to talk about the personal planet retrogrades in here. So I did a couple slides here. Mercury retrograde happening 3 times next year. Okay. February and March, Pisces, and then in this slate color green, these are the birthdays that are tied to this. Okay, so the Mercury retrograde dates are in February, end of February. Okay, and they go till March through March 20th, 21st. Okay, so then we have the degrees of when they are, and all of these are in water. Okay, Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio are the 3 water signs. So I don't feel like this is really common at all, that they are all in the same element, okay? And they're all staying in the same signs, because sometimes you can get it where it'd be like Pisces at 8 degrees, and then it's going to go back into Aquarius. So these all stay with the same signs. I also don't feel like that's that common, okay? So then the second one is going to be in the summer, so June 29th, 30th through July 23rd, 24th. And these are both in the sign of Cancers. Again, these are the birth dates. These are the ones you're going to feel it. Okay, so if your sun sign is within those, but you may or may not know may have some other planets there, I can help you figure that out, and then we can look and see where those are. Okay, and just figure out how to work with those energies. All right, and then lastly, Scorpio, November 24th, 25th through November 13th, 14th. And those birthdays are November 10th through the 15th through October 27th and 30th. Those are the people whose birthday is going to feel that. But again, if you have other planets there or angles, you will feel those. And lastly, we have Venus retrograde, which does not happen often. Okay. So this will cross the sign axis. So Scorpio through Libra, and then the birthdays that are affected roughly, okay, are going to be October 29th through November 3rd, and that's at the Scorpio 8-degree mark, and I always add a couple days in there, and then Libra 22 degrees. So those are birthdays around October 13th through the 18th. Okay. Where to find me? I'm on Instagram at Readings by Beth W. I have a Facebook page and a meetup page. Common Sense Astrology by Beth W. This is my YouTube channel. If you'd like to reach out to me, Readings by Beth W at Gmail, or my website. And then I have a Google phone number there. You can reach me. So there we go. I hope this made sense to everybody. But again, always going towards your North Node without neglecting who we are, where we came from, because sometimes you just may need to step up into that. Okay. So thank you. And let me stop sharing. Okay, there we are.
All right. Thank you for that. Very informative with lots of, good material, juicy material for people to dive into around the node in their natal charts and also in their transiting charts. I think there's a lot of information there that people are going to be digesting as they
I
watch.
have one thing, Fern, that I forgot to mention. Um, there's going to be interactions because, as you mentioned, we've got Jupiter going into Leo, okay? So it's going to make contact with Mars, okay? So this is important to note that in November, I would say roughly the 15th of through the 21st of 2026, we're going to have Jupiter and Mars in Leo with the South Node, okay, at 25 degrees. So those are some dates to be aware of, okay? Because that's, again, Jupiter's expanding, but we can have Mars. I feel like it can also teach us moderation, right? Are we overdoing things? Mars can cut, Mars can fight, Mars can testosterone, the sexy, sexy part, right? So it can be a lot of stuff in there. So we don't know how it's going to show up for each individual, but these are dates just to recognize. And then lastly, Pluto is going to make contact with the North Node. I'm sorry, Jupiter, Mars, South Node in Leo. Okay, and that's going to be November 15th through the 21st, 2026. And then the planet of Pluto, which is going through Aquarius, 4 degrees, and the North Node are going to be conjunct, and this is going to happen November 14th through the 20th, 2027. Okay, so again, the nodes go backwards. So we're going to start at 29. We're going to go down to 0. So sorry, I forgot to, I was like, oh, I got all notes and I forgot to bring that in there.
Yeah, there's a 2026 is a big year. We could probably, do a whole day presentation on all the sort of really dynamic astrology that's happening in 2026. But, for now, we got, I think, the big ones that we could cover. And just want to see if there's any other last thoughts from you, Connie, before we finish up our presentation on the astrology of 2026.